Hello everyone, you're welcome to this edition of The Inside. I am Bablet Jonathan. As we go closer to the end of this year, we are starting a series on the state of the nation. We are looking at the present situation of the Republic of Cameroon and how we can move the compass from misery, poverty, hardship, increasing cost of living, socio-political, economic challenges, and security problems affecting the nation from north to south, east to west, to prosperity and peace. And this is what our guest calls the Cameroon Dream. Meet him in some few seconds. Thank you for staying with us today. Our guest is Roland FRU. He is a Houston-based strategic marketing and business consultant, author, and advocate for sustainable development. In Cameroon, he holds a bachelor's degree in divinity and an MBA with a concentration in finance, providing him with a robust foundation to guide companies. As a founder of the Cameroon Sustainable Development Project, CSDP, FRU is dedicated to promoting peace, unity, freedom, and prosperity for all Cameroonians, and the CSDP focuses on empowering individuals, particularly young people, through education and training in key industries such as agriculture, technology, health, finance, financial services, renewable energy, real estate and construction, and media and entertainment. In July 2024, he authored The Cameroon Dream: How to Achieve National Peace, Unity, Freedom, and Prosperity for All Cameroonians, and the book outlines a vision for transforming Cameroon into a prosperous nation by leveraging its bilingual advantage and focusing on sustainable development. It emphasizes the importance of social cohesion, economic growth, and environmental sustainability. Thank you for joining us today, Roland.
You're welcome, Mr. Jonathan.
All right, let's begin with this. The title of your book, The Cameroon Dream. Well, many, if not all, are talking about, all who are in Cameroon, your brothers and sisters in Cameroon, and other Africans are talking about the American dream. You are talking about the Cameroon dream. Tell us more about this.
Yes, so I'm talking about the Cameroon dream because I think, Mr. Jonathan, life is all about perspective. And I think we are at that crossroad that if we have the right perspective, we can experience exponential prosperity in Cameroon. And I think this book lays out that plan that can help us have perspective, because that is all it takes. If we have perspective, we can make significant progress within a very short period of time.
Some who are here in Cameroon and elsewhere on the African continent probably struggling to make ends meet, struggling to make it in life, as we often put it here. We'll say that you're talking about the Cameroon dream because you have already realized your American dream. What will you tell them? What is your response to this?
Yeah, again, we have been through this crisis for the past 7 to 8 years. It's going on 9 years. We've tried many strategies, but I think the very foundation, the substratum, is our people looking for ways to experience this prosperity that we are talking about. My journey started in Bamenda, Cameroon, right? So people think maybe the energy or maybe the push, the drive to see our people get better started in America. No, it started in the streets of Bamenda. I've always believed in us. I've believed in our people. So my journey actually started in Bamenda. So I had this vision to build maybe a media company. And I put together young people, and we aspire to dream big. And this all started at the age of 18. Mind you, everything changed for me when I came across a book in my father's bookshelf titled Think and Grow Rich, because my dad used to work for the American Embassy, so he will buy books from India and America. And one of those books that I read at the age of 13 was the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That book changed everything about how I saw myself and how I saw life. And so from that time moving forward, I was not just in class listening to what the teacher was saying, but I was perceiving it from a different standpoint. And that everything that I learned, I was asking myself, how can I apply it in the real world so that I can experience transformation? So that has been my journey. So when I'm talking about the Cameroon dream, it didn't start today. I've always believed in us, and I've been pouring in Cameroonians in my community since from the age of 18 right up to today. And so it is possible for us to achieve success in Cameroon, in spite of what we have gone through, in spite of the pain. I believe that we can surmount, and if we have a blueprint, a strategic plan, we can be able to make progress within a very short period of time. So I think if someone says, I'm in America and that is why I've achieved the American dream, and so I'm talking about the Cameroon dream, if I've achieved the American dream, and then I should stay in America. The reason why it is the Cameroon dream is because I believe in us.
All right, you read a book at the age of 13. No, that's quite remarkable, because we are in a context here where people don't read books. Reading is the listing on the table of preference of many. And you read a book at the age of 13. Was that your first book?
Yeah, besides the books that were required for us to study in school, yes, that was the very first self-help book that I read.
All right. I believe that should be inspiring to many of us who are not very good in that perspective of reading, and that's why it is often said that if you want to hide a treasure from a Cameroonian, put it inside a book. All right, so let me get your thoughts now on the actual situation of Cameroon, the socio-economic and even security situation of Cameroon, characterized by a lot of unpleasant things: poverty, hardship, misery, increasing cost of living, security challenges in the northwest, in the southwest, in the far north, in the east, and in major cities, in rural areas, just everywhere in Cameroon. What's your take on the actual situation of Cameroon today?
It's a very unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in, Mr. Jonathan. My family has been a victim of this crisis as well. My father-in-law was kidnapped by the Ambers. He was in their custody for more than a month. So I want you to picture that scenario, right? I was driving and all of a sudden a phone call came in. My wife was calling, and I picked up the phone, and she said, Dad has been kidnapped. It was a very painful time for us. Just receiving that call that Dad has been kidnapped, the entire family was in shock. Now, why I talk about books a lot is because it was still another book that helped us, or helped me have perspective on how to navigate that situation. I had read a book written by an FBI hostage negotiator. So I handled this like every kidnap case. So the first thing was to put the family together, everybody come together. The next step was we come up with a strategy, seek mentors. I had to call some of my friends back home. Some of them were commissioners, and some of them were lawyers, and in the diaspora as well, and seek their counsel. So they briefed me on exactly what to do in a situation like this. with the book I read, the knowledge I had derived from that book, I was able to put everything together and come up with the game plan. The strategy was one member from the family will be communicating to these guys alone. That is, no one else in the family talks to them except this individual that we have unanimously chosen. And I think that strategy was very effective because we could control the information. We could understand exactly what we were doing. They were demanding for 11 million francs. So the first thing was to make sure that we create that relationship with them, because you can give all the money in the world and at the end of the day still lose your relative. So the idea was be friends with them. The most important thing is to create that relationship, of which we did. One thing that happened during this process with this young man was we realized that in spite of how much we gave, nothing was changing. One day you hear this is the new general. The other general that took the money is not the real general. This is the new general now. I'm like, okay, who's the general now? You see, we keep having that. So we got at some point and we asked, like, what do you really want for your life, young man? And we realized that what this young men were asking for was not maybe what happened in 1961, but what they were demanding was just the basic necessities of life. They wanted access to education. They wanted opportunities. They wanted jobs. And because of this, I said, okay, if this is what you really want, then we can solve this problem, right? And that is what got me into research. And I'm like, okay, if it's job, if it's access to education, how can we figure this out? And that is what got me into research. Mind you, Mr. Jonathan, in spite of everything that transpired within a month, this young man, the relationship we built, they still wanted to take the life of my father-in-law. Lucky enough, he left the camp and made it alive back to the city. One thing that happened that was so fascinating to us was how the Amazonian leaders abroad presented this story on their platforms. The idea was that these people live in Yaoundé and they come to Bamenda to cause trouble. And this is someone that I know that lives in Bamenda, right? Woke up that morning in Bamenda, but the narrative painted on media was this man lives in Yaoundé and comes to Bamenda to cause trouble. What got me thinking was, who else, how many people have died and this false narrative has been painted about them? Mind you, I'm not blaming anybody. I understand the situation in the country. I'm a solution-oriented individual. So this didn't make me bitter, but it got me thinking and understanding that I have a certain degree of responsibility as a Cameroonian to contribute or play my own part to help bring peace and sustainable development to the nation. And that is when I started putting out content, creating awareness on the condition of our country. But before that, while I was doing my MBA, we were asked to write a paper on corporate social responsibility. It's rather unfortunate I didn't find sufficient data to write on this subject from Cameroon. So I looked into our neighboring country, Nigeria. What caught my attention was the Shell Niger Delta oil crisis. That is, the Shell Oil Company based in Britain has been exploiting oil in the Delta Niger area since 1966. And what I found fascinating was the inhabitants in that area have been struggling. The oil spills out, their crops are being destroyed. And so the people in that area sue the Shell company. And what really changed everything for me was realizing that these are all Nigerians. And this is happening to them. If it was me, based on my upbringing, I would say this is a francophone against an anglophone issue, or is the government against an anglophone issue. That is how I would have perceived it. But this happening in Nigeria got me thinking. And so with that, I'm realizing through my research that most African countries have been struggling post-independence. And so my thing was, we should be a little bit patient on ourselves, but strategic at the same time and cooperative if we will make progress. So I started putting out data out there letting our people understand the condition of our country, that 75% of Cameroonians are below the age of 40. 60% of Cameroonians are below the age of 25. 42% of Cameroonians are below the age of 14. The life expectancy of the average Cameroonian is 61. 23% of Cameroonians live below the poverty line. That is on less than $2.15 a day, according to the World Bank. So these are the statistics about our country that got me thinking that, okay, what do we do in a situation like this? And so the motivation for writing this book is saying, if we do not do something, we risk losing our country, maybe to some foreign nation that will come back again to exploit our resources. We risk losing a generation of people. Only approximately 3.11% of Cameroonians are above the age of 65. That means the rest of the population cannot hope on this 3.11% to take care of the entire nation. And if we, the young people, especially those below the age of 40, don't rise up and do something, this will be our story in the next 20 years.
We have to rise up and do something. I just want to step back a little bit to highlight something which you mentioned about the security issues and the kidnapping of your father and so on. As we are talking now, the Minister of Territorial Administration of Cameroon, Paul Atanganji, was responding to questions in Parliament some days back about the kidnapping of the divisional officer of Idaba to Roland FRU and the council staff of that municipality, Tongo Ismail, who are in captivity in neighboring Nigeria. And he said that efforts have been made to set them free. I'm actually bringing up this because of the strategy that you talked about, the strategy that you deployed to ensure the freedom of your father when he was kidnapped. And I'm actually thinking that maybe the Cameroon government ought to borrow from this strategy, because when this happened on the 1st of October, the first thing that we saw wasn't what you mentioned, assembling the family to discuss and to put some strategies together, and then a person identified as the mediator between the family and the kidnappers. What we rather saw was threats, intimidations, injunctions, ultimatums to who I don't know, from the governor of the Southwest region, and some kind of draconian measures that were put in place. And I think that this strategy which you just talked about is something that should be borrowed by those who are in the think tank that has been created to see about the freedom of a divisional officer and the council staff who were abducted. Now, looking at the economic situation of the country and the kind of extreme poverty and misery affecting a good chunk of the population living below the poverty line, what do you think is the cause of the problem? Because before we want to talk about the solution, it would be good for us to look at the causes. What has brought us where we are today?
That is a very important question, Mr. Jonathan. We have to go back to the era of slavery and slave trade. That is where it all began. So we got involved in slavery and slave trade. We cooperated with foreign nations and sold our people. Mind you, again, I'm not blaming anyone, but this is history. I'm not emotional with history. I look at it as it is so that I can be able to make sense of my situation. So we got involved. And so with that, the continent was drained. Cameroon was also affected as well. So we drained our continent of talented people, craftsmen, individuals that had potential. All of them, these guys were sold as slaves. So with that, the continent, in as much as we were making money at that time through this trade, but we were weakening our economy, we're weakening our manpower, we're weakening the potential of the individuals within our continent. So over time, those people went and worked as slaves in plantations abroad. The continent was drying up. Then in 1884, some young guys sat down in Berlin and thought about colonizing the continent. And so they went on and divided the African continent into their different spheres of influence. So they came down and then they took over. In 3 months, they locked themselves in a room, came up with a strategy, came down in 15 months, they colonized the entire continent. So that was the second wave of pain on our people, which is now colonization. There's both a blessing and a curse to it, because today when I look at everything that has happened, I'm trying to ask myself the question, what can I take out of this terrible situation that can make sense to me? Today we speak English and French. Like right now I'm communicating, you can hear me and you can understand me. And this are some of the blessings that I even see coming out of the entire idea of colonization. But however, if people, a continent, keep sending out people consistently leaving the continent, or resources leaving the continent, over time, every nation becomes poor. When the Industrial Revolution started in Europe, while those people were advancing, we were now still at the stage of an agrarian economy, right? We were still barely struggling to feed ourselves. Why? Because we had already involved in slavery and slave trade, which has drained our continent of potential talent. So now we were at the stage where these people were advancing, right, with the Industrial Revolution, while we were still struggling to feed ourselves. So this is our story. So right up to today, you can see why other nations are moving or advancing. We are still struggling with these basic issues, or maybe food or shelter, while other nations are thinking about technological advancement, going into the moon. So slavery and slave trade, colonization, all of these are contributing factors. Now, mind you, talking about this idea, like what I'm painting in this book as a strategy for our nation, it is important to factor in that our people might be resistant to this idea from inception, of which I understand, and that is why I take the time to explain. The reason is simple, Mr. Jonathan. There are different parts in the human's brain, right? There is that crocodile part in the brain, there is the meat brain, and there is the neocortex. The crocodile brain is the brain, that part of the brain that is activated by fight or flight mode. That is, we lived in a time where we used to fight with lions, and then now slavery and slave trade came, and then colonization. Now we're talking about neo-colonization and all of that. So the instinct nature in us is to resist any new information that is not familiar to us. So for instance, if I say, hey, Jonathan, the first tendency is to flinch, and the next thing is to think of running, because, I mean, you have been triggered by that fight or flight mode. So that is the first part of the brain. Now, if Jonathan turns around, looks at me like, hey, it's Roland. Now, that is the meat part of your brain being activated to say, oh, this is a friend, there's no threat. So when I'm presenting a new information like this, or maybe different strategies that people have been presenting to advance the nation, the first thing is that fight or flight mode that is being activated in our brain to resist that information. And then now there is the neocortex. That is the third part of the brain. That is the logical part of the brain. That is the problem-solving part of the brain. That like, okay, now this idea that I'm proposing makes sense. You move from the fight or flight mode to the midbrain, and then now we are at that logical part of solving the problem, or looking at the situation from a friendly and logical perspective. Like, okay, it makes sense. Now let's go on and implement it. So I think one of the biggest problems that we are dealing with at this stage is really unity. There's nothing that is eating us up or slowing our progress like unity. Like if we can look at one idea and say this idea works, and let's unanimously work on this idea, we'll be able to make progress. So I think I've said enough, but that is what I think, based on my research.
Talking about the unity of the nation and the unity of the people of Cameroon, who ought to be looking in the same direction, in the same perspective of ensuring peace, unity, freedom, and prosperity for everyone. This is what you're fighting for. This is what you stand for. But now, we can't achieve all of this without the enabling environment. And the enabling environment is peace. There should be peace. Without peace, it will be difficult to achieve whatever we may be talking about here. So, in your perspective, how do you think this can be achieved for us to have peace across the board? Because as we speak now, there are issues in the northwest and southwest regions. There are also security problems in the far north, and there are security problems all across the board. How can we have peace and a country, have a united country from north to south, east to west?
Yeah, I think the first step towards having peace, there are different layers to this, and there are different approaches that we can, like, if I'm tackling this problem, the way I will approach it in the northwest and the southwest might be different from how I would tackle it in the far north. The reason is simple, because these individuals have different or diverse grievances, right? You can solve it with a broad stroke. So my thing is, when it comes to what is going on in the northwest and the southwest, there's a different approach, right? And when it comes to what is going on in the far north, there should be a different approach. We can go into all the nitty-gritty, but at the end of the day, these individuals need someone to communicate with them and let them understand that their grievances are heard. So there are different ways that we can go about this, but the first step, my friend, is to help our people understand that if we do not do something, regardless of where they find themselves, they might be an Amba, they might be a Boko Haram fighter in the far north. Regardless, these people want something, right? The kidnappers, those who are with guns or maybe terrorizing the nation, they do want something. And based on their perspective, what they are looking for is legit. It is righteous. Some of them have this kind of notion that it's the righteous cause. And we cannot invalidate that, right? So the first standpoint is to understand that they want something. What do they want, right? And how do they want to go about getting what they want? And it is for experts to come in, understand from their perspective, not from my perspective, not from the government's perspective, but from the perspective of this young man holding guns. And I think that unique point of understanding can change everything for good. It's communication, effective communication. I think that I cannot emphasize that enough. You can have all the strategies of which we do, but if we don't effectively communicate that strategy, get these people engaged, we won't have peace. The good news is, Mr. Jonathan, but throughout my research, going way back to the 1400s, looking at how other nations have evolved over time, what they experience compared to what we are experiencing, and how they were able to navigate those situations, I want to say it is very easy to solve your problem when you find a model. So what I've done, or what is coined out in this book, are models coming from nations that have achieved what we desire to achieve. And I think if we can deploy that, because I agree with you, without a peaceful environment, it is hard to attract investors. That is a fact. I agree with you. So the enabling environment from that context, I do agree 100%. And I think this is a conversation we are starting. And I think we will dive deep into more of this. And if the government or those in authority need my help, I'm willing to step up and assist so that we can help make this nation better and move forward. I think all of us Cameroonians, regardless of where you find yourself, you have a duty and responsibility to this nation.
Right. We are going to the newsstands now, so take a look at what the newspapers reported this week, and when we come back, we'll go further to talk about the Cameroon dream, how to achieve national peace, unity, freedom, and prosperity for all Cameroonians. And we're looking at what you have put together in the book The Cameroon Dream, which outlines the vision for transforming Cameroon, a vision for transforming Cameroon into a prosperous nation by leveraging its bilingual advantage and focusing on sustainable development. We'll be right back in a moment. The press review. The Guardian Post reports that ahead of the 2025 presidential election, Archbishop Samuel Kleda has called for urgent reforms to avoid chaos. Another issue of the paper exclaims, Pierre should heed divine message, referring to Archbishop Samuel Kleda's call on leaders who no longer reflect the aspirations of the people to step down. In yet another issue of The Guardian Post, the government is urged to have mercy on Cameroonians with regards to the increasing tax burden contained in the 2026 finance bill. The Sun highlights the 0.59% increase in the 2025 state budget compared to 2024, and with regards to the announced reduction of government subsidies on the prices of petroleum products, The Horizon says Cameroon is heading for a third fuel price rise in 2025. According to Municipal Update, the President of the Republic, Paul Biya, has approved 49 billion francs CFA for an electricity recovery scheme. And with regards to the local development tax, Municipal Updates reports that government projects over 126 billion francs CFA additional revenue for councils. The Post government to launch second phase of Yaoundé-Douala motorway, a motorway that has been under construction for several years. In The Voice, the president of the National Communication Council, Joe Chebonken Kalabupse, underscores the crucial role of the media in efforts to ensure peaceful elections. And another issue of The Voice projects some Cameroonians who have been in the spotlight polls of 2024, including International Anti-Corruption Crusader Barrister Keremuna, International Peace Crusader Tumfo Barrister Nico Hale, and others. Thank you for staying with us. We are still with our guest, Roland FRU, who is a Houston-based strategic marketing and business consultant, author and advocate for sustainable development in Cameroon. Now, in your book, you're talking about a vision of transforming Cameroon into a prosperous nation by leveraging its bilingual advantage and focusing on sustainable development. First of all, what do you put in leveraging its bilingual advantage?
Basically, Mr. Jonathan, we speak English and French. That is our national languages. And I think it's a blessing for us. And why? Because we can take advantage of markets within Cameroon because we speak English and French. We can take advantage of markets within Africa because we speak English and French. So we can sell to English nations within the continent, and we can sell to French nations within the continent. That is a unique advantage that we have. We can also sell to foreign nations in maybe Europe and America, nations that speak English and French. This is a unique advantage that we have. So it is perspective. The way we look at it, we can see the English and French as a curse, English and French as a blessing. And so that is how I perceive it, that we can really take advantage of opportunities within our country and outside of.
All right, now focusing on sustainable development.
Yes, talking about sustainable development, I think this is a subject that the UN has been focusing on as well, and many other developed nations around the world, and including developing nations. Now, like I talked about a model previously, we need a model. It is easy when you have a model. Now, the American motivational speaker Tony Robbins said, if you want to be successful, do three things. look for someone that is successful within your industry, and then you copy 3 things from them. He said, number 1, copy their belief system. There is a way that individual believes about themselves, believes about their environment that led them to where they. Number 2, he said, model their physiology, how they carry themselves around in their environment, how they dress, how they speak, and how they behave in that environment. Number 3, he said, model their syntax. Syntax has process words, or how they process their thoughts, and how they communicate, right? So their belief, how they carry themselves, and how they speak. He said, if you model these 3 things, you will be successful. So when I looked at this concept, I asked myself the question, how can we achieve success in Cameroon? Yes, we have all of these factors that are stacked against us. How can we navigate this and achieve success? Now, I started studying and I realized that a nation like China, in 1990, their GDP was approximately 390 billion US dollars. China did something amazing, maybe through the leadership of Deng Xiaoping. When he visited America, he came back and reformed their economic policies. He said something so profound. He said it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white. As long as it can catch a mice, he said it's a good cat. And he said, what does that mean? That what we have been doing here with this communist system is not working. We will model what America has done. So it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white. As long as it can take poverty out of our community, we will model that. And so what they did was reform their economic policies and model America over a considerable period of time. So today, China's GDP is approximately 17 trillion, going on 18 trillion US dollars. I looked at a nation like South Korea. South Korea was a very backward and struggling nation, just like us. What did South Korea do? South Korea decided to specialize on key industries. They reformed their economic policies, specialized on key industries, and within a very short period of time, they were able to make significant progress. As we speak, South Korea's GDP is approximately 1.6 trillion US dollars. Now, looking at this, you can realize from this conversation that a model is being formed now. I'm realizing that there is some variance that I can be able to deduce something out of, right? So what I looked at was, if we have to get to where we want to be really fast in Cameroon, we can either choose a bicycle, we can either choose a car, we can either choose a train, or we can choose a plane. And looking at where we are right now, we need a plane. And so I asked myself, how can that a plane be manufactured? And it boils down to this what is coined out in the Cameroon Dream. I identified 7 key industries that are transforming the global economy, but also essential for developing nations. Specifically, it aligns with some of the vision that our president has outlined. So these 7 key industries are transforming the global economy. And if we focus on training Cameroonians in these key industries, just like what South Korea did, we can be able to experience exponential growth within a very short period of time. So these industries are agriculture, technology, finance, healthcare, renewable energy, real estate and construction, the media and entertainment. These industries are transforming the globe as we speak right now. So if we can focus, the goal of CSDP, our organization, is to train 3,000 Cameroonians in these 7 industries that are transforming the global economy, with the goal that these individuals will go out there after receiving training. They will start businesses that will employ fellow Cameroonians and take our country out of poverty and obscurity in the next 20 years. So the ballpark of the vision is empowering the private sector. The private sector, because 90% of the jobs in America is created in the private sector, not in the government. 90% of the jobs here are created in the private sector. So if we can empower the private sector of Cameroon, focus on the private sector, not too much of the government talk, but more of the private sector, our projection is we can be able to move our GDP. Right now, when I was writing this book, our GDP was 45 billion US dollars. It dropped to 43 billion US dollars. Now it has moved up to 47 billion US dollars. So we can move our GDP to $1 trillion in the next 20 years in the private sector.
Now, there is something which you're laying emphasis on in your book, The Cameroon Dream. That is the importance of social cohesion. How important is social cohesion to the development drive, to the growth drive of your country, Cameroon?
Yes. Yes, I've lived in America. America is one of the most diverse nations on earth, and many people maybe don't know about that, but America is very diverse. In as much as the country is diverse, you realize that there is the Democratic Party and there's the Republican Party and all of that. So at least we have two predominant parties in America that actually controls the political narrative of this country. So there are individuals in here coming from different backgrounds, from every nation on earth. You find someone from every nation on earth in America. Irrespective of the language that they speak, they find themselves here. So, but they figure out a way to work with this system to provide for themselves and their families. Now, when I'm talking about social cohesion, I'm talking about social cohesion from the standpoint of us understanding that the diversity that exists in our nation is a blessing. And you shouldn't look at someone because they speak French or because they speak English a certain way. We should be looking at individuals based on what they are able to do. We should be looking at them from the standpoint of competence, not from the geography or from the region they come from. And I think if I'm employing someone, I should not be looking at them because of the part of the country that they come from, but rather because of their competence. And I think this can really create that conducive environment for development, for growth and productivity. And I think social cohesion is factored in that. So that is the standpoint that I look at it when you're talking about social cohesion, looking at the diversity as a blessing and celebrating each other's diversity, but at the same time, embracing someone because of what they can do, not because of where they come from.
All right, we have been looking at the 5 pillars for nation building. We've talked about unity, we've talked about peace, we've talked about prosperity, growth, sustainability. I want us to talk about this very crucial aspect, freedom, ensuring the right to life, liberty, property, and happiness for every citizen. Tell us more about this.
Yes, I think this is a concept coined out by the founding fathers of America, and that every man was born with a certain degree of liberty, freedom, and life and the pursuit of happiness. And I think it is a fundamental or biological right that you as a human being, you were made in the image of God, and only God knows you. And so why should we limit you based on what we think about you? And I think that premise is very instrumental for development, right? When I look at our nation, we are being restricted as Cameroonians from within our community, and there is a certain degree of restriction that we experience from the state. What I've seen in America is the love for their nation. And that is what motivates me more than anything on this mission, that they genuinely love their country. And when you look at me and I look at you, and we can have that mutual respect and understand that this is a human being made in the image of God. And I don't know what they have inside of them. And so I should not project my limitations or my thoughts on their destiny. Only God knows them. And I think that is the foundation of this premise. Because when you understand that God made this person, I don't know what God made and put in the inside of them to manifest on earth. So with that, I begin to withdraw myself from imposing my limitations or my perspective on them. If I'm not helping them get better, I better leave them alone. And so why am I saying this? I'm getting a little bit emotional with this, but my perspective is, if we start even in our communities, in our households, even parents understanding you might give birth to that child, but you do not know the destiny of that child. You might be a teacher in the classroom. You might be teaching that child, but you don't know the destiny of that child. You might be even a pastor. Yes, that is your congregation, but you do not know who is sitting right there. You might be a state official, a chief. You might be even a doctor. These individuals that you come across, you don't know their destiny. God made them. So I'm saying this to say this brings a certain degree of fear in us as to how we treat one another. Because when I look at the 40,000 plus life that has been lost, and I ask myself the question, who has died among these 40,000 people that possess some greatness in them that we will never see? And it is that level of fear and reverence of what God has put in people that you see talking about freedom. Because when you think about that, you start creating that environment where you let people be free. You're not quick to judge people. You're not quick to impose your thoughts on people. And I think it's that certain degree of freedom that we can create in an environment that can really help to enable a progress really fast within an environment. I see Americans really love their people. They believe in children. They believe in the future. They prepare for the future. They are not only stopped in the past. They work for the next generation. Compared to other places where people work for the previous generation. And I think it is that perspective that if we have, again, I emphasize a lot on perspective because everything is perspective. Without it, we will not make progress. How do you see it? So at the end of the day, my goal is that I transfer this knowledge in others, and then we can see the same problem differently. And as we see differently, we start seeing each other differently. And as we start seeing each other differently, something will start happening in the atmosphere.
And in all of these, we have values that are very important to solve issues like corruption, embezzlement, mismanagement of public funds, which are rife in Cameroon, and all other social ills that hinder the growth of a nation. We are going to take interviews now. And when we come back, we'll talk about the 3 core values.
The main problem of Cameroon is that we as a people don't know how to create wealth. So if it goes around wealth creation, and when you talk about economics, it answers the question. It asks and answers the question, how do you create wealth, be it personal or common goods? How do you create the wealth, and how do you use it? So how do you create wealth? How do you use it? If your wealth creating mechanisms are poor, and if you are also using the money and the resources poorly, you are bound to run into trouble. And that's the problem with Cameroon. We don't know how to create wealth, and even the little that we have, we waste it. We are corrupt, we steal it, and so on. We don't develop our roads, we don't develop our infrastructure, we don't develop anything. And the worst of all is that we put the money into an educational system that is useless, an educational system that has failed. When I say this, a lot of people are angry with me. Just because you have your master's and PhD in the pocket doesn't mean that you can create wealth, doesn't mean that you can solve problems. So we started at 8 million or 15 million, I don't know what, but we are 30 million today. And the question we should be asking is, when you have all these youths going around with masters and PhDs and all sorts of degrees in their pockets, how does the state feed them? That word feed. How do we feed them? How do we solve our problems? That's where the issue is. So over the years, we have not known other ways of creating wealth. We think that when we cut tree trunks and sell them, is we are creating wealth. It's a that's primitive economics. Then, when we don't have when the tree trunks are not enough, we go around and we squeeze people to give taxes or whatever. And then when it's not enough, we squeeze them more. We hold them by the balls and squeeze. That is not a proper way of putting money in the coffers of the state. Yes, it can work. It can work for starters, but as you go down the road, it's not going to work. That is going to fail. What we are effectively doing is we are killing the chicken that lays the golden egg. That is the point. You cannot keep getting money for the nation just by through taxation. It doesn't work like that. You will tax and tax and tax. Before you know it, you have killed the system that produces taxes. What you rather need to do is to change the system and find out how you can get your population and your people to enter into more productive activities and to create wealth so that you stop wasting your money on things that your people can create. You create systems that or create an environment that allows them to be productive. That is the bottom line. As long as you're not creating wealth, as long as your people are not doing things to solve problems, as long as your environment does not allow for people to create wealth, you will run into a problem. And if you keep on taxing, before you know it, you have violence. So you remember what happened in 2008? That is the kind of problem you get when you just keep pushing people to the wall. So as far as I'm concerned with this tax law, I'm very happy with it in the sense that it now allows people to listen carefully to what I've been saying, wake up from sleep and change our education, teach our children how to produce our goods and services, create a working environment in which everybody can come on board and lift up this ship that has turned over and then set it on sail again. What we ought to do is you rather want to increase the taxable base. Increase the taxable base and tax that taxable base. Everybody tax them a little amount and then you will have what you want. You will have peace and the nation will grow. But if you don't do what it takes to increase that taxable base and the few who are producing, you keep taxing and taxing, then that taxable base will continue to shrink until it will collapse. Personal income tax is not a bad thing, in quotes, watch me, because in our days of West Cameroon, I'm old enough to remember that our parents were paying that kind of a tax. And I remember some women in Donga Mantung where their husbands were not productive. And then the women were selling shea and corn, and it would be the women who would try and pay this income tax for their husbands when the tax officer came by. So it's an old thing. But the bottom line is, you are introducing something when people are not prepared. You are introducing something when there are so many people on the streets without jobs and they cannot even feed themselves. So what am I saying? Empower the people. Give them the tools and opportunities to create the wealth for themselves and then for the nation. If we just do that, we'll have no problems. But as long as you have not empowered people, as long as you have not given them the tools to create the wealth that we all need, and all you do is go after them because they are breathing, you are sowing the wrong seed.
They want everybody to declare their taxes. That is a good thing. But how are they going to implement it? That is where the challenge is. How do they expect somebody from Bamusov, from Edabatu, from Oku, from Nkambe to declare when even those who are in urban centers have problem declaring? So you see, the tools for government to achieve that goal have not been put into place. Having said that, everybody has to declare their taxes in a normal situation. That government also has to put the tools in place to achieve that goal, without which I don't see them achieving it for now.
Many Cameroonians will ask you this question: how can you declare what you don't even have in the first place? What you earn is not even enough for you alone, talk less of a family. And they're asking you to declare and then pay taxes on it. When we look at the Cameroonian context today, is it really feasible?
That is where I say the challenge is. As I stated earlier that paying taxes has never been of goodwill to many people in the world because it started in the Bible. Zacchaeus had a lot of enemies. Now, there are so many ways to convince the population to happily pay their taxes so long as they see what they have in return. Government needs money from taxes to improve on the living conditions of its people. And so, if the people of Cameroon are paying the said taxes and they see a difference in their living conditions, I think they will gladly pay. So, if government comes out with the idea of everybody paying taxes, government should be ready to improve on the living conditions of the population. Again, local taxes is a very good idea. But does government have the mechanism to audit those who collect the tax? Those who are paying the taxes at the level of the council. If they see some improvement in their living conditions, they will happily pay. But they should not be paying those local taxes as defined by law, and instead of their condition improving, they find their mayors driving in cars, luxurious cars, that might be they could not afford. There is no way you will convince that population that it is not the local tax money which the mayors are using to enjoy their life. If the various municipalities collect their share and the population is not even aware, the population does not see any change in their life, I bet you it's like you are pushing them to the wall. And when you push somebody to the wall in such a way that he has no way to liberate themselves, they will be forced to give a fight in order to liberate themselves. Do you want to get to that level? I don't know. But again, I said, the intentions are, however, good, but do we have the tools to implement? To say that the local tax will be the one to improve on decentralization, I don't think it's fair. Because there is a text, a law passed by the National Assembly and promulgated by the head of state that says 15% of the national budget should be distributed to the local councils. Why have that law never been implemented? The representative of the people, they should keep away party discipline when it comes to taxes, because taxes affects every Cameroonian, whether you are in the CPDM, the SDF, the UNDP, the FSNC, the KNDP, they are all Cameroonians. So they need to have a serious and honest debate to ensure that what they send out there will be absorbed in some degree of happiness by the population.
You're welcome back. Roland FRU, tell us about the 3 core values. The Cameroon Dream actually rests on 3 core values. Humility, or let me put it the way you put it, humble, hungry, smart.
Yes.
Tell us about these values.
Yeah, so these are values that I read from another book written by an American author. I had this in my mind, but I didn't know how to really put it in a way that would hit, right? So reading that book, it helped me gain clarity to come up with this. These are values, like this whole mission and vision and project is to redefine what it means to be a Cameroonian, right? What does it mean to be a Cameroonian? Like, we are struggling even with identity issues. Right, we want to be like another nation. We want to act like another nation. I don't want to call names, but it is all identity issue. So, what does it mean to be a Cameroonian? Can you distinguish a Cameroonian from any other African? So in the course of writing this book, we redefined what that means. And this is the new ethics or new image that we want to see, that a Cameroonian is someone that is humble. What does it mean to be humble? Humility doesn't mean that you deny who you are. Humility is accepting who you are. But at the same time, it doesn't make you superior to others. So humility is very, very essential. It's a key attribute that every Cameroonian should embody. Right? We talk about humble, we talk about hungry, and we talk about smart. Just to rush through these points, when we talk about hungry, how bad do you want this transformation? How many times are you willing to fail and keep going? What time do you show up for work? What time do you go back home? Are you willing to do the average like anyone in your company? Or you're willing to put in the effort more than everyone in your company? Maybe when everybody is gone home, you are the last person to stay back and make sure that you finish everything that you need to do to prepare for the next day. So when I'm talking about hungry, I'm talking about someone with a desire to be successful, that they are willing to work extremely hard to get there. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about hungry. How bad do you want it? Can you look at this individual in their eyes and tell that they really desire to be successful? So these are new values that we are introducing as to what it means to be a Cameroonian. So humble, hungry, the desire for growth, and then smart. That is where you talked about the education thing, like people don't want to read, right? Like I have a stack of books right here. And mind you, these books have been read. It's not just something that I put behind me to look cool. They have been read. And if I pick a title here, I can be able to tell you instantly, like this book talks about this, and this is what it has helped me or shaped my life in this way. So smart is not just academic, but smart in the sense of applying what you have studied. And I think with our organization, we have a university, online university, Nation Builders. We emphasize this, that you don't just study, but you come up with a plan to apply what you have studied. So I think humble, hungry, right, and smart. So humility in itself has to do with respect, right? Respect. We have to respect. I mean, we might not like maybe what is happening in our country, but we need to respect our leaders. I think so. We need to respect those in authority. And I think without that level of respect, because the thing is, the government has all the problems. That is how people see it. And the citizens have no problem. But what I think is there is a certain degree of responsibility that the people do have, and there is a certain degree of responsibility that the government does have. And it is when we understand our own role, because sometimes we can focus on talking about what the other person ought to do, but what should we be doing? What have we not done? And if we can focus on ourselves, I think a lot of the things we're talking about when it has to do with the government will be taken care of. Yeah, that is why my whole idea is focusing on us. Let's work on us. If I give you the money to make me the chair, and we agree that you get the job done in 1 week, in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, I should be able to come and pick my chairs, right? I should be able to come and drive home with my chairs. If you tell me you prepare a visa for me to travel abroad, be honest with the details of that transaction so that you don't let your brother or sister get stuck somewhere. This is what I'm talking about, because this destroys our lives more than what we are talking about as to what the government is doing to us. Can we be honest with each other? If you see your brother abroad, are you happy that they are there, or you wish you were the only one abroad? If you're working in a company as a black person and then you see another black person coming, do you start feeling bad? You wanted to be the only black person in that office and you're not happy that your brother has showed up? These are issues that we overlook. And the government is the broad stroke that if we say, oh, the government is a problem, then we can escape all the other issues that we are dealing with that we ought to be doing to one another. So I think if we can unite, be honest, love one another, that is what humble, hungry, and smart embodies. These values that tomorrow, if I travel around the world, they want to talk about Cameroonians. They say, no, Cameroonians are honest people. Cameroonians are loving people. Cameroonians are cooperative, genuinely, with no ulterior motive. They really want to serve people. And if that is the new image that Cameroon has, that we are presenting right now to the world, guess what? Prosperity will come. We will attract investors. We will love one another. We will go on to do business with one another. And I think if this environment is well established, that is what scripture says, seek first the kingdom, and then all these other things shall be added. And I think humble, hungry, smart, and calculates that.
Roland, you believe that the transformation of Cameroon will be driven by Cameroonians and not
Yes.
foreigners or foreign aid. And in that perspective, you are talking about empowering the people or giving power to the people. Tell us what you mean by power to the people in this perspective.
Yeah, I think power to the people was an idea that came up maybe in the 1960s. I think Nous, détenons picked this up with the SDF party, was power to the people. That is what his message was all about, that you, the people, have the power. It was that basic, that you have the power to change your destiny. But how you go about that, it's all up to you, right? But again, this message coming from this book is to remind us that we have what it takes to change our country. Now, my point is that there are different types of power, or maybe courage, that people have, right? There is the animal, the physical courage, which people like. Somebody can step up to you, they are very aggressive and they want to fight. Maybe they have a gun, they want to shoot you. That is all physical courage. Now, there is moral courage. That is the human courage. That is what we should really be embodying, like the human courage, where you're able to use your mind and your intellect to solve problems, complex problems. You're able to come up with models and strategies and solve complex problems. Now, there is the new type of courage, which is the divine courage. That is the courage that enables you to overlook even the shortcomings of others and look more within. And that is why you see people like Jesus Christ have been worshipped today. It is not just that he was the Son of God, but it's that he embodied that divine courage, that he was able to transcend what was happening in his environment. So I think, back to your question, it is important that Cameroonians understand that their destiny is in their hands. Somebody might say, no, I'm driving a truck. How can you say that? I say, yes, it is in your hand. I say, I'm just a trader. Yes, it is in your hand. What we do in our little homes, in our shops, in the bars, in the restaurants, affects the entire nation. So whatever we are doing in our offices affects the entire nation in some way. And this is what people maybe are not conscious of. So what we have going on in our country is a combination of our actions, not a particular individual.
All right. You also talk about a Cameroon Sustainable Development Bank that should be established to pool resources and fund businesses. How strategic is this aspect of efforts to push forward the development drive of Cameroon?
Yeah, looking at the bank, like I believe that like individuals within our nation, maybe you save your money in UBA, you save your money in the BSEC Bank, maybe there are other financial institutions where maybe you deposit or save your money in. The whole idea was looking at the Amazonian crisis, for example, which is an area of focus right now. This war was funded by Anglophones. The government did not contribute to fund this war, right? The government did not contribute to make this war become a reality. The people decided to put their money where their mouth is, right? They believed in that. And if they can put their money together to fight a war and sustain a war, Anglophones or Cameroonians in general now can put their money together to build their country. So, like I said, Cameroonians are going to predominantly fund this project. So we are going to collectively invest our money in the development of our nation. Now, there are many investments where people put money in and they don't get their money back. But this is us saying, with this bank, maybe this microfinance, we can have this microfinance institution and say, okay, this young man has been trained, this lady has been trained in one of these industries that are transforming the global economy. They've come up with a good business plan. We've read the business plan. Our experts and analysts have looked at the business plan, and it makes sense. There is a potential for growth with this business plan. Now, what do? We're like, okay, we are going to loan you money because you came through this institution, because you came through this training. This bank now serves as that platform where you can borrow capital. We are not giving, we are borrowing at a minimum interest rate, maybe 1 or 2% below the national average. Let's say maybe the SEC bank is loaning money at maybe 6%, and we say, okay, we are going to loan you this same money, maybe 10 million francs at maybe 4.5%. And this is how you're going to pay the money over 5 years or over 10 years. Now, with that, these individuals do not just receive training. There is a financial institution that we've created that can fund this project or fund these individuals to go start a business, and then we can monitor their process, their progress over time, and have experts that can help them in case they are struggling. Because I think many people fail in business because I've listened to us. There are about maybe 249 49,000 registered businesses in Cameroon. Yes, about 249,000 registered businesses. And what are the foundations to starting a business? How will you know if that business will work? How will you raise capital to fund that business? Working capital and all of that. So with that, if these people go through the training, they know what it means to start a business, they understand what that business is all about, the barriers of entry and all of that, now we can trust them to say, Cameroonians, this is a movement, a revolution, because I call this the industrial revolution of Cameroon. That is what we are launching. We can trust that this individual knows what they are doing, and they'll go out there and start a business. They will succeed, because business, in as much as it's an art, is also a science. We can predict if a business will be successful or not. There are instances where we know things can go sideways, you can predict, but those, that will be very limiting. Like we will have very limited failure because these individuals had the training. If Amazon, for instance, is starting a company somewhere, we can trust that they will succeed. Why? Because they have a model that has proven to work. So I think that is how the bank is going to work in collaboration with individuals that have the desire to be entrepreneurs and go out there and start businesses or grow and scale their business. Maybe there's someone that has an existing business and the business is doing fine already. And we can look at the numbers, look at their balance sheet and look at everything and like, okay, this makes sense. Okay, what do you need to grow? They can have some training, and then we say, okay, we can help you expand and scale. Maybe you're looking at opening other branches. How do we fund your activities? How do we fund your business activities? So I think that is what that bank would serve to help Cameroonians grow and scale in the private sector.
You stand for cooperation and not competition.
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
One of my big brothers here, he always says this. He said collaboration is the new competition, and I like to say that. So we are in a world today with social media. Look at what is going on around us. To be thinking that you want to be competing with people, toxic competition. There's a healthy competition, and there is a toxic competition where you want to just destroy someone, and competition because you want to be better. Right, those are two different things, right? We want a healthy competition, a competition that says you want to be better for yourself, right? So we are going to cooperate with existing businesses. One of the things that I see that we are really struggling with is marketing. Someone can produce maybe good cocoa, or maybe produce cheers, or produce maybe gari or whatever, but they lack the market. So they are depending on some middlemen to sell their products. So we are going to help massively with marketing. So we have started a digital marketing company to help our people, especially all these existing businesses that exist already, to let the nation know we are not coming to compete. We are not competing with anyone. We are not competing with anyone in the private sector. We are here to cooperate and see what you've done, what you're missing out, how can we help. It's a mutual relationship that we are building with every existing business in the country, to understand that if Cameroon works, if Cameroon is successful, all of us will be successful. And so that is basically how I see cooperation. A key example of cooperation, because someone might listen to this and say, well, where are these ideas coming from? The idea is just crush your competitor. If they are a threat, you just crush them. But I don't see it that way. A key example, I remember when Apple was almost crumbling, right? Apple computer, they were almost crumbling. If you know the story, you understand that Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they have been competitors for a very long time. But Steve Jobs realized that Bill Gates has the money, and he goes to Bill Gates, and he's like, man, my company is struggling, and I need you to borrow me money. And you realize that Bill Gates set aside his difference, right, and invested in Apple to help a company that would have been perceived as a rival to grow, because he said Apple is very important for the development of America. And so he did not only invest in Apple because of Steve Jobs, he invested in Apple because he saw the potential of Apple and how instrumental it is for the development of America. So that is the kind of, those are individuals that I draw inspiration from, that shapes my thinking on this subject. So that is how I see collaboration. We can collaborate with everyone to make our nation what we want it to be.
Right, let's wrap up with a call to action. You expect all Cameroonians to come on board for the development of the nation. That's why I said earlier that it does not matter what you're doing, what you have or what you don't have, but what matters is your contribution, the contribution of each and every Cameroonian for the development, the growth, and the well-being of the nation. What do you expect from those Cameroonians, especially those ones who have little or nothing, who are unable to afford 3 square meals? How can they really contribute to nation building?
Yeah, that is a very important question. Everyone, again, like I said, I'm not God, and I don't want to play God. Every day is a blessing. And if you wake up today and you can breathe, you can walk, that is the first place to start, right? You can do something. You can share this message with a friend. You can speak about peace with a friend. That is a good place to start, because the first step we are looking at this is sensitization. Like, this book was written in both English and French. That is 2 in 1. If you see, this book is about maybe 479 pages. It was written in both French and English. You can spread that message of hope. So if the least thing you can do is be cooperative. Some people don't have anything, but they are disagreeable. Like, they just disagree with everything. Be cooperative. That cooperative energy is enough. That is all. Now, for those who can do something, especially the business owners in the nation, our goal is to distribute 5 million copies of this book. And there are many people who can't afford maybe 10,000 francs to buy this book. You can buy this book and distribute it to young people. This is you putting hope in their hands, because we are going to have little groups where we'll be discussing what you study. Buying the book is not the end of it. Remember, this is just an introduction to the Industrial Revolution that we are starting in our nation. So you are buying this book. The next step is to make sure that we follow up that you read the book. And then we'll have focus groups and small groups where we'll be discussing what you have studied in this book. So those who do not have something, those who have can buy this book and distribute it to those who do not have. And they start studying and get engaged. And again, I want to say this to the business owners in the country. You buying this book, involving in this project, distributing these books across the nation. We have T-shirts and many other things that come along with this sensitization process. We will be initiating peace talks, right? Foncha and maybe Aijo are all dead and gone. I wish they were on the table so that we can have a constructive conversation on everything that happened. Since we don't have these individuals alive, most of the things we are dealing with today is speculation. But we have historical documents, but it's all speculation. So solving this problem will require us having dialogue where it is necessary while building at the same time. If there's a young person or a group of young people holding guns, like I said, that's where those who say they don't have anything, you can be a cooperative human being, and that is enough. And we will be cooperating to communicate and initiate dialogue where it is necessary while building simultaneously. For the business owners, you are investing in a peaceful environment where you will do business in. So you saying, oh no, I will not buy, I will not distribute, I will not share, I will not buy a book for this struggling young man that has ambition. You are saying you want to continue to have individuals in the community that will become thugs, pick up guns, and break down your business. So you investing in this is investing in the growth of your business. And as you nurture that young person, they might be a potential customer tomorrow and not be somebody that is an impediment to your own growth. So this is where that cooperation, churches, we have seen the effect of this crisis and what has happened in our country. It is time for us to unite. NGOs, the MTNs, the Orange, the Camtels, all the companies that we know about in the country. So this is how we can cooperate. CRTV and other media outlets out there, that we can find a good idea that we can all unite on and say our people will come out of poverty. That is what this Cameroon dream embodies. I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Jonathan.
All right. I think the message is clear. Everyone has to come on board. We have to be, like the Bible says, one another's keeper. We have to be a blessing to the person next to us. We have to give a helping hand to whoever, so that together we can advance as a nation. Thank you very much, Reverend Roland FRU. You're joining us from Houston in the United States of America, and you are a strategic marketing and business consultant, author, and advocate for sustainable development in Cameroon. Thank you so much for the insight and wisdom you've shared with us in this edition of The Insight.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Jonathan.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today's edition of The Insight. Next week, we'll be coming back with another episode of The State of the Nation. Stay with us. Thank you.